Hey, this is Dave Kelly and this is the Manschit podcast. Today I'm talking to Tom Turcich. Tom's a 31-year-old American guy who's been walking around the world for the past 5 years with his dog Savannah. When he finishes, he'll be only the 8th person in history to have done that, and Savannah will be the first dog to have walked around the world. He's a very interesting guy and we talk about all sorts of different topics. Tune in and enjoy the episode. Well, good morning. This is Dave Kelly and this is the Manschit podcast. I'm sitting here on a beautiful winter's morning looking out over the Mediterranean in Kaş in Turkey, and I'm sitting here talking to Tom. Tom's a very interesting guy, and I want to explore why it came about that he's travelling around the world by foot. He's been on the road for 5 years, and welcome, Tom. Great to meet you. We're recent friends, but we've had some good connection and had some great discussions, so I thought that would be really worthwhile sharing with our audience. So, Tom, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to have a chat to me.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Dave, and thanks for hosting the dinner last night. It was very pleasant. Like you said, some good conversation.
Yeah, we had an interesting bunch of friends around for dinner, and really, it's amazing when you dig sometimes and give people the space and the kind of openness to share stuff. It's amazing what comes out.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a very good conversation. Looking forward to talking to you today.
Yeah. So, Tom, so you've been on the road for 5 years, hey?
Yeah, it's been 5 years walking around the world. I've walked 18,000 miles across 38 different countries and 6 continents. I've kind of been waylaid because of the pandemic. I was supposed to walk from Kazakhstan to Mongolia this past summer. All those countries closed, so I'm waiting for this summer to try again, and then I'll fly down to Australia, walk the coast of Australia, and then back to California and walk from California back to my home in New Jersey, after having walked already North America, South America, Europe, and across North Africa. So it's been a long journey and still a long way to go. Yeah.
I love it how you say, I'm an Australian, clearly, and I love it how you say you're going to walk the coast of Australia. How much of the coast are you planning to walk?
I imagine all of it, the whole East Coast. Yeah.
Wow.
So from Darwin down to the bottom, but not walking across it. That's a whole other journey and expedition in itself through that wasteland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Follow the easier, more developed route.
Yeah. So that's an amazing journey to be on. You had any hairy moments?
Yeah. I actually had a very hairy moment recently in Turkey. I was leaving Gaziantep, which is about 150 miles from the Syrian border, and I was crossing over this mountain range to this other city, Adana, on the other side, and I was just about to crest this mountain, walking through the forest, when this moped drove up with 2 men on it, and they jumped off, and the guy held a shotgun to me and had me turn around, and they pulled off my backpack and just pulled out everything out of my backpack, pulled out everything out of my cart, and where they thought I was a terrorist, a PKK member, a member of the Kurdistan fighting force, or some people call it a terrorist organization, depends on how you classify it. But that was really scary, and it took about 2.5 hours before they believed kind of anything I said, even after looking at my passport and license, and kind of it was really intense. And then in Panama City, I was held up at knife point. A guy, it was kind of this team job, a guy held me up at knife point on my last day of walking in Central America, right before I was going to get to an Airbnb after having walked about 330 days. And so a guy holds me at knife point, kind of pushes me into a shop, and another guy grabbed my backpack with my laptop, my passport, Savannah, my dog's paperwork, and amazingly, the cops happened to be right there, and they got this guy with my backpack, so I was super lucky.
Wow.
I've had a couple other kind of harrowing moments, but I'd say those were kind of the starkest.
Gee, that's amazing. So in the second incident, did they left you and took off with the backpack, and the cops were right there and apprehended them?
Yeah, well, so the one guy, I mean, I knew I was going through a bad area. Even in Central America, I kind of had this sense that I was in this really sketchy area, so I tried to push through the city. And it's always a little sketchy pushing through a city, especially in Central and South America. Just one of the more dangerous parts of the world. It's just like a high rate of violent crime and a high rate of sort of violence to robbery. I mean, if you get robbed, there's a higher percentage of them stabbing you and then taking your phone versus like taking your phone and just leaving you, for example. So I was pushing through the entrance kind of Panama City and just not getting good vibes from there at all and trying to push through. And I had walked far enough where I thought, okay, I'm out of the worst of it. And I sat down, and then I'm actually texting my dad, happy birthday, and then I feel something cold on my neck, and I look up, and there's this red-eyed, nasty-looking guy standing over me, and he says something, I don't know what he said, and I stand up realizing that he's holding, it was more like a shiv than a knife, and he was holding this shiv, and then I start yelling at him, he starts yelling at me, and then he kind of backs me up into this little convenience store. And while he's backing me up into this convenience store, another guy grabbed my backpack, which I had slipped off, which normally I always keep on, but I had slipped off. It was my last day of walking in Central America. I kind of just sat it on the chair, and this guy grabbed it. And then this other guy that had me in the shop, kind of had me backed against the wall. I'm yelling at him, the two owners are yelling at him, and then eventually he takes off, and then I look out, and there's a crowd out there, and they're pointing down the alleyway, and I look down the alleyway, and I see the cops throwing this guy against a brick wall, and my backpack laying on the ground.
Oh, wow.
So I just caught that visual of this guy being thrown against the wall, but yeah, super, super fortunate, because I had all my important paperwork, and it would have been a nightmare to have to get all that again. So yeah, that was interesting. A couple minutes.
Yeah. Wow. Does that surprise you that there's in 19,000 miles?
Yeah, about 19,000, yeah.
Does it surprise you that in all that time and in 5 years that there's only been a couple? Because it's not like you can escape a sketchy situation quickly, like on a motorbike. You just get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors. When I was in Central America and going through El Salvador and Honduras, which are 1 and 2 for the most violent, the highest rates of homicide in the world, I would wake up early and just make sure I got to a hotel at night. And normally I'm wild camping. When I was in Mexico, for example, I'd really push far into the bush and camp there an hour or two before sunset, make sure I was well hidden. So I was really, really careful about going through there. And also I had a pretty strange situation back in America, in Georgia. I ran into this guy, and that was a real learning experience because I came from a nice suburban town, upper middle class in New Jersey. And so I lived this like very privileged kind of life in a bubble, and I hadn't developed these skills that I think like women do, where they just get these creepy guys hitting on them all the time, and they get this sense that this guy is not a good guy, just cut it off and move along. And so I was always just polite, and I ended up kind of just being too polite and getting into this weird situation with this very creepy guy. And that was a really good learning experience where I just realized if you get a bad vibe from someone, you got to cut it off. So I've had a lot of kind of encounters with people that I just don't trust, but being on my own and having to sort of fend for myself, I've gotten really good at just telling someone to screw off.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if they're a nice person, who knows, I don't know what their intentions are, but if I get a bad vibe, I'm going to meet someone else down the road who I immediately have a good vibe from, and I trust them immediately. So if I get a bad vibe from someone, it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to not talk to this person, and then the next person who I do trust, then great, and I don't have to worry about it. So I think it's kind of a little bit of just learning how to fend for yourself and defend yourself. But also, I mean, 99.9% of people are just trying to live their life and make a little money and go home and hang out with their family. So, it's definitely very much the exception. And these people who, when I got, held up here in Turkey, it was the military. So, the good guys in a certain sense. And then in Panama, I'm sure those guys are struggling and having a tough time, maybe feeding their family or whatever. So it's hard to blame them, but for the most part, people are good and yeah.
So not taking it personally.
No, definitely not taking it personally. No, definitely not. Yeah, just what happens when you walk around the world? You encounter the spectrum. Yeah.
So you saying that after having grown up, not being that experienced with your own intuition, that this has been a great exercise of sharpening that up?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's just undeveloped, when you just inherently can trust everyone and nothing bad really ever happens in your life. You've never been held up, you've never been in a really sketchy situation, especially as a male. You don't kind of get like lecherous, leery looks as you would when you're a young woman. And I feel like young women have that developed better than I did, for sure. And then, a couple of strange encounters, and you realize, oh, all right, so you gotta kind of look out for yourself a little more. And you can't just put up with someone you get a bad sense from just out of politeness.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's really about being strong in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of the first lessons of walking around the world, is just how to fend for yourself.
Yeah. So I've got to ask the question, and as exciting as all this is, the curious thing for me is a guy of 26 doing that. When you went to university, and presumably all your peers at the time were preparing for started their careers and maybe started relationships and buying houses and all that sort of stuff that is the normal pattern. What was it that caused you to rethink about doing that and motivate you also to do something that's out of the box and different but wonderful?
I had a friend who died. She when I was 17, she was 16, and it was a very formative experience for me. And it kind of hit home that I could die and that it could just happen randomly, like a light being turned off. And I realized I needed to do something. And so I after she died, it took me a couple months to sort of resolve this sort of haze that my friend Anne-Marie's death had left on me. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to travel. And then I discovered this guy, Carl Bushby, who actually is still walking around the world, and this other American, Steve Newman, who was walking around the world. And it just stuck with me. And for whatever reason, that was like the idea that just was like a little seed in my head. And then I went to school, I went to university, and it just never left me. And as the years went by, it kind of grew and became more and more of a part of me, where I realized if I didn't walk around the world, if I didn't do the world walk, then I could never live with myself, kind of thing. It just had become such a part of me that I had to do it. Yeah.
We've got Tom's dog Savannah. Is something's going on with Savannah here?
Bunch of dogs here.
Yeah. So a bunch of dogs in Turkey. Lots of dogs, and generally, how's on that point? Digressing for a second, there is a lot of dogs in Turkey, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of dogs, a lot of nice dogs. Yeah, they have a very different, very unique culture here with dogs.
Yeah.
It's not like Europe or America where the dogs are immediately in someone's home and they're kind of like a child, or in poorer developing countries where they don't maybe have the resources to take care of a lot of dogs, or not all the dogs are spayed or neutered, and there's a lot of street dogs, and people are pretty mean to them, and the dogs are pretty aggressive. Here, there's this respect for animals and this nurturing for animals, but there's also this expectation that dogs don't go inside. So it's this really strange culture. I think on the coast here, on the southern coast, it's much more Western in their view, and there's a lot of people who have dogs who bring them inside. But if you're in central or northern Turkey, they're good to dogs, but it's unthinkable that you'd bring a dog inside. If you went into a village, I stayed with villagers, and it was unthinkable for them to let Savannah inside. And I really had to. One night I slept outside with Savannah on a sofa outside at these people who invited me to their house, because I have kind of this deal with myself or with Savannah that wherever she sleeps, I sleep, or wherever I sleep, she sleeps, because we walk the same distance. And one of these villagers, I slept out on the couch with her because they didn't want to let Savannah in, and the other one, they let her on the porch inside, so it worked out. But after they wanted to put her in the cellar with the potatoes. Yes, but they treat they treat dogs very well here. It's just a different sort of culture. And if you look around here, I'm sure you've seen it, and they have some at the amphitheater. There's this ottoman thing that they used to do with the stone bricks. They carve holes in the stone bricks to collect rainwater for the stray animals.
Oh, right. This is the small, like about 6-8 inches.
Yeah. It's from the Ottomans, yeah.
Is that right? I was discussing that yesterday with a friend. We thought maybe they were to take a post and create some sort of structure above.
No, that's just for the animals.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's an old Ottoman weird little quirk they did for the stray animals. Yeah.
And it seems that thing is, in this town here, and I noticed it in Istanbul as well, there's a lot of dogs which is kind of almost shared amongst the community. The local government, they spade them, but they don't then, and they probably inoculate them. But from that point on, they seem to be fed and looked after by the local community.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's very different. Very different culture here. I mean, Savannah and I have encountered a lot of strays, and in the first 2 years of our life when we were walking Central and South America, a lot of really mean, nasty strays who, have rocks thrown at them and get kicked, and just don't have any really loving community, and so they kind of become mean. And then to come here, and the strays are generally very friendly and come over with their tail wagging and want to play. It's relaxing for me and relaxing for Savannah. Much easier life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've got some other friends who you'd probably be really interested in meeting, Tom and Anna. And Tom's walked all around the world as well. Probably not as in a structured way as you, but he's certainly done a lot of long walks. And he talks about in Turkey on the Lycian Way, them walk. They don't have a dog with them, but a dog's kind of adopting them. And the dog will come, meet them at a village, and just walk with them for a couple of days. And then they don't kind of, they're well fed. So you're not getting dogs trying to steal your food and that sort of thing. And he said this has happened numerous times where the dogs walked with them for maybe 2 or 3 days. And then there's another, and then they were thinking, hey buddy, there's just 2 of us and we haven't really got all that much to share with you food-wise. And he said, you're probably better off to go with a bigger group. And so next thing, a bigger group was going the opposite direction. And the dog just caught onto that and turned around and went back. And it's very typical. And people talk about how communal the dogs are. And it's striking and wonderful to just see how the community cares for animals and respects them.
Yeah, sounds like a good life for the dogs, for sure. Yeah.
So what happens when you've come across aggressive dogs? How do you deal with that? Because in some sense, a dog would attract.
Yeah.
Protecting the turf.
Yeah, we've encountered a lot in Central and South America, and most of them are just a little territorial and want to push Savannah away from where they are, and so it's just coming up and barking, and then you just kind of. That's probably the skill I have most developed, is like fending off dogs, and you sort of just kind of like throw your energy at them. You spin around and to show your dominance, and kind of they'll back away, and then maybe the next level is you pretend to pick up a rock, and almost all the dogs have had rocks thrown at them, and that's enough to turn them around. Or if they come at Savannah, you do throw a rock at them and scare them off, which is not ideal, but when they're attacking my dog, that's what you do. I've only really encountered 2 truly vicious dogs. One was in Algeria, and we were passing by this shepherd, and there's always the dogs there with the shepherds are pretty aggressive generally, very territorial and protective. And so I was aware of what I was going through, and I heard the dogs barking behind me, and I turned around, in sort of this dominant manner to back them off. But as soon as I turned around, I saw this one dog was just, I could see it in his eyes that it was crazed a little bit, and really not just territorial, but like a mean dog. So that was very scary, and then luckily the shepherd pulled that away. And then the other time was in Azerbaijan, which was definitely the scariest. I encountered this. This dog would have ripped Savannah apart, would have ripped my leg apart, and we kind of just had to edge our way through its territory. And it was really, really intense and scary. That was the 2 meanest. Yeah. But for the most part, they're okay. Most of them are just barking, and that's not doing anything.
Yeah, so no attacks, no biting or...
No. Some of them would, but no, I mean... They're not vicious dogs, just territorial.
Yeah. Okay, so you headed off on on your trip around the world. So from the age of 17, when your friend passed away, did you? You mentioned to me that you were working during your holidays and earning money and saving that. Was it always with a view to do something and the idea of actually walking? And why walking?
So my friend had died, and then the idea of the World Walk kind of stuck in my head. And then summers I would install solar panels and just save. And then after university, I lived at home and just saved. And it was always with the view of doing the walk around the world, the World Walk. And I had a lot of student loans to pay off. So, like I said, living at home, paying off student loans, saving money. And I had saved up enough where I thought I could walk for 2 years and kind of bleed out my savings, paying off loans and everything else.
And this is working in installing solar panels, or?
Yeah, installing solar panels.
Okay.
It was a great job. I got paid well. I'm outside. I worked in an office for a little bit and just wanted to die. I hated it. Well, not for me.
What did you study at university?
Psychology and philosophy. So unless I got a master's in either of those, then they're kind of useless anyway.
Yep.
But I just thought they were interesting, so that's what I studied.
Yeah.
And so just worked for years and saved, and then walking kind of appealed to me because it seemed like the slowest, most immersive way to see the world. You're not just seeing the highlights. You're not just seeing Paris and Berlin and Machu Picchu or the Aztec temples, whatever. You're not just seeing these things you fly in and see as a tourist, but you're seeing the villages and you're seeing the local restaurants and how people really live. And that was really appealing to me, is I wanted to see what is the world really like, and it seemed like the best way to do that.
I'm sure that's true. I've been noticing, because I'm normally really happy to walk on foot. And when I'm staying right now, I hired a scooter. And I just noticed that what I do is I tend to shorten my time frames. So, for example, today when we were meeting at 11 a.m, I could leave at 10:57 and fly down here, and I love that. But it's a lot more experiential to leave at 15 minutes to and stroll down and maybe meet some people or just observe things. Yeah. It's a unique way of travelling.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to do. I think long term for travelling, it's a great way to understand the world. It's very easy to sort of insulate yourself as a traveler, especially because the places you're going to tend to go are places where other tourists are, and then you're kind of seeing this warped version of the country. And I mean, it is the country, whatever country you're in. I mean, it is the country. Kash is Turkey, but it is very different than if you went to the Black Sea or if you're in the center of the country in some of these villages where there's no tourist. And so that's what I was looking for, is to go to the places where I have this kind of unique sense of discovery, and then also to just really see, what is the unpolished, unsheened version of humanity in the world.
Mm-hmm. So do you, have you met many other walkers?
I met a guy, another David, a Brit, who was walking, an old guy, maybe, let's say 80-something, 82, and he was walking from England to Jerusalem, and I met him in Greece, and we walked for a couple of days together.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Oh, and I met this other girl who had walked the length of Wales, Ursula, and written a book about it, and then now she's kind of looping Europe. And she's a really, really amazing, strong girl. But it's funny meeting her because I had walked Central and South America, and coming to Europe, I was like basically sleepwalking because it's so safe and so developed. And I've been walking for 2 years at that point, and it was interesting to see kind of the juxtaposition between us, where for her, she had walked Wales, and now she's walking around Europe, and for me, it's like this is like not nothing, but it was kind of like nothing, and we slept in this field. I was like, let's just sleep there tonight, and she's like, oh, but houses can see us, shouldn't we go? And it's different as a woman too, camping alone, and I have a dog, but also. Like, I knew I wasn't in Mexico, I wasn't in Colombia. I didn't need to kind of hide away at night. We were in, where did we meet? In Albania, and even Albania is very safe. And we met a shepherd that night and just talked, and nothing. But nothing's going to happen. Most people, especially out in the country, it's very safe. I think there's this idea too that like sleeping out in the country is so scary and it's dark and you're all by yourself. But the country is statistically so much safer than a city. And if you're just camping out in the country, there's just farmers, and they're probably there's a really strong local community, and there's a really strong sense of accountability too in those communities. So those are like the safest places to be. Versus if you're in a city, that's when I'm the most tense and the most on edge. But like out in the country, like in Turkey, I'll sleep. It's very safe here, and so I've been discovered by farmers or whoever out in the country, and I'm never,
waking you up or something.
Yeah, waking me up, or shepherds, or even like the local police once thought I was like a refugee or something, and came to say. Actually, I remember this is when I was walking Turkey the first time along the Black Sea, and these guys, the local police came over, and they woke me up, and the guy, there's like 7 of them, and the one guy I was holding a gun, but my first thought was like come on, man, let me sleep. Like I was just pissed off because I knew that they weren't going to do anything, and they're just checking to see what was going on. But like that was like initially years ago I would have been panicked and all that. But my initial thought was like, hey, just let me sleep, let me go back to sleep. Yeah. So it's very safe generally.
Yeah. There's definitely a consistent presence of the police in this country.
Yeah.
And the gendarmerie and the military. Yeah, it's clear that that's a priority for the current government.
Yeah.
You mentioned this Carl Bushby. Was he who's presumably, I don't know, but you mentioned it just earlier, that is he someone who inspired you of what's possible?
Yeah, definitely. I would say he's one of my heroes. I'd say one of my idols growing up. Or not growing up, but after I discovered walking around the world, he was the one. He's an ex-British paratrooper. He was the first guy in the modern era to cross the Bering Strait on his own, like manpower. It was him and this other explorer did it. But his whole thing is he's walking back from the bottom tip of South America back to his home in England, and he'll never go home until he like completes a single route. And there's been a lot of holdups along the way, so he's been doing it for like 2 decades. And it's just kind of, he's way more intense than I am. I kind of am looking forward to this being over at a certain point, and he's just taken on this as a lifestyle and this larger mission. And honestly, I think that's kind of what it has to be for anyone if you're going to walk around the world. I mean, I thought I'd be done by now, but with getting very ill after South America, that stopped me for about 7 months, and then now with the pandemic. And it's a long time and takes a lot of conviction to see it through. It's a long, difficult journey. And so...
What's your conviction?
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And also, I've made it this far, so you gotta see it through. I think that's the main thing. It's kind of like being pot committed. I'm invested already. Yeah.
How many countries will you plan to have gone through? Is it literally talking about every single country, or
no? But I will have hit every continent. That's the main thing. That's what I wanted to do. And then the route is kind of based on where is it kind of easiest to get visas, because visas could be the main holdup.
Right.
I didn't really do much of Africa. I did Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. It's because Africa is massive and will probably add 2 years to the journey, and I just don't feel like doing that. Maybe that'll be a separate adventure for another year. But yeah, it's kind of the route is hit every continent on kind of like the easiest bureaucratically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you just work out the route yourself based on your own assessment as to where's the best message? Because I'm taking it that you're like down here in southern Turkey. There's this Lykian Way, which is a very famous hiking trail, but you're not on that. I take it, given that you've got you're pushing a cart.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I follow roads mostly, and like on the coast here, this is really not great walking for me. This is kind of my least favorite walking, honestly, because there's only one road, and it's pretty trafficked, and it's just a lot of the same kind of scenery, which is beautiful scenery, but it's a lot of coastline, and it's touristy, so you don't really feel like you're discovering anything. I much prefer maybe like something like the Black Sea, where I can kind of walk in the hills and in the forest and kind of discover these less touristy places, or in the center of the country where I can just walk country roads. But right now it's kind of by necessity, come back to Turkey and wait until Central Asia opens back up again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So has Turkey been a good place to be while this pandemic's been on?
Yeah, I mean, Turkey very, very safe country. It's interesting because it's right on this line of being a developed country and a developing country. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in a certain way, where you don't have to worry about getting water, or you can stay at a nice hotel if you get to the cities, and you can get pretty much anything you need. It's also safe. People have some money, but as like a photographer, you can take photos, especially out in the countryside, of really traditional practices and shepherds and locals with more traditional garb on.
Yeah.
So it's really great for photography. At least the sort of photographs I like to take. But then you can come to the coast and you can get a nice cappuccino, and you know, so it's a great place to be. Coming back here definitely was a little defeating and a little pretty difficult, because I lose that sense of discovery which generally propels me. And coming back here, this country I already know, and I already spent 3 months in, and which is very safe and kind of very sleepy. I'm kind of, I don't want to say sleepwalking my way through this, but I've been walking for so long, there's no challenges for me.
Right.
And so it's very easy. Yeah.
Are you recording this on a blog?
Yeah, The World Walk.
TheWorldWalk.com.
Instagram, Facebook, all that. Yeah.
So check all that out.
Yeah.
So Tom, what's the part of the photography that are you a new photographer? You just learn that skill set as you're traveling, or?
Yeah.
And what's the purpose of that? Are you going to use that to just promote the actual site, or is it going to be used in another way?
I'm not sure. I've published one photography book on. I went to India last winter and published a photography book on that. And
available for purchase?
Yeah. You can purchase it on my site. And otherwise, photography is just kind of a means of sharing the world with people.
Yeah.
And so I try and show it in a unpretentious and real manner. Try not to. I don't want to be like an Instagrammer and just have these really dramatic, highly edited images. I want to show the local people and just how life is. And so that's kind of the goal of the photographs, is just to share the world. And as I've gone, I've gotten better and better and better at it. Definitely one of the highlights of my life is Steve McCurry. He shot Afghan Girl. He's one of the greatest photographers of all time.
Yeah.
I've talked to him, and he follows me on Instagram, which is definitely the most mind-boggling thing to me. It's very validating. So it's definitely, gotten me somewhere, I suppose, just traveling, taking photos every day.
Yeah. Hey, do you think that's possibly a career for you going forwards?
Yeah, I'd say actually it's probably the most likely career. My mom was an artist, and so we went to a lot of museums growing up and discussed art a lot. And so I definitely have, I think it comes the easiest to me. And so I think it's very likely, yeah. I think it's probably, if I was going to bet what my job would be after this, it would probably be a travel photographer.
You said before that in some ways you're looking forward to the trip being over. And as we talked last night at dinner, you were talking about your strong family. When you meet someone, you kind of think, I wonder what their background is. But you spoke so fondly of your family and the connections you've still got and the friendships and just family relationships, that it's not like you're a person who's aloof and got no connections and nothing, and you're just kind of trying to walking and to sort yourself out or whatever. You've got a very strong background that you're looking forward to moving back to and integrating into that community. And
yeah. I remember a kid. I did a talk at a school a while back when I was home, and some kid was like he said I was like the opposite of the Into the Wild kid. What's that guy's name? Because he kind of wanted to escape from everything and felt he didn't like society or all these pressures put on him. But I'm not like that. I grew up with a very big family, and we had great family parties, and I have cousins that I'm very close with, and I definitely miss them and looking forward to getting back to them. But this is just something that I need to do first, just for myself, kind of thing. Yeah.
And is there in some respect I wanted to ask you about visas and the fact that visas have a limited time. And have you found yourself, or one thing I want to touch on is just, have you found yourself having to modify your trip to get the hell out of that country before your visa expires? Or what's the consequence of overstaying a visa if you're in that situation?
It's happened a couple times. In Europe, I had the Schengen visa. So I walked from Denmark down to Spain 90 days, had to get a visa extension in Spain, and so that took a while. Ended up staying in Spain longer. In Algeria, it took me a while to get an Algerian visa, and I kind of had to hurry through. By the time I got into Algeria and got the visa, I kind of had to hurry through Algeria. And then for like a country like Turkey, which is a long country and have a 90-day visa, it's the same thing where you kind of have to kind of speed through it to get along the Black Sea. But I like that pressure because it's very motivating every day. You got to get up and go. And it's like right now, kind of life is very amorphous, and you're saying, all right, well, I can stay, I can go. It doesn't matter. I'm just waiting for April until I go back to Central Asia. So even though in a lot of countries, in the bigger countries where there's more land to cover, I need to keep a stricter schedule. That's kind of welcome in a certain way because it propels you forward.
So we talked about going back to your family. Do you find that? How have you found that? We talk about let's talk of walking meditations. Has just the fact that you've got a lot of time by yourself to think and just to ponder life, etc. How has that been beneficial to you, as opposed to perhaps if you envisage your life back home doing what your friends are doing, that lifestyle? How has this benefited you in terms of your own personal growth?
Yeah, I think it's something that you can't really appreciate until after you do it, because you just kind of are who you are no matter what situation you're in. But I think if I had stayed home, I would have been much less self-aware and less sort of aware of the influences on me. But when you're walking all the time, I'm just constantly turning over my memories and maybe mistakes I made, or family members, and you're just constantly looking back on your life and looking forward in this very slow, sort of methodical way. And you put things aside and pick them back up, and it's definitely made me more self-aware, like I said, more aware of that I'm sort of a creature of circumstance than anything else, especially just from traveling. You see all these different lives that people live and these situations that people are born into. It really puts a mirror up to yourself. But I think the walking is great in a way of kind of removing stress, because you just work through whatever problems you have. You just work through it because you have nothing to do but think on the road.
What do you mean by work through in that regard? Like, you're a guy of 26. I'm twice that age.
No, I'm 31 now.
Oh, 31, okay.
Yeah.
You started when you were 26.
Yeah.
But you... do you think there's always a chance to, no matter what age you are and what experience you've had, that there's the availability of experiences that you can go through and try and understand what's happened?
Yeah, I think walking is just something about walking where it's the slow movement, and it's when you're doing it over a long span of time, and I think it would take months to resolve anything. But it's just this. Your brain is kind of working in the backgrounds, and you pick up a memory and you look at it and you go, oh, okay, oh man, oh, that's painful or whatever, and you set it aside, and then a couple weeks later you pick it up again. You go, all right, whatever, yeah, okay, and then you put it aside again, and you just have this space to let your unconscious or even your conscious kind of just work through something, whereas normally you're just kind of pushing through, you're powering through life so quickly, and especially today where you're always, it's so kind of future-minded and trying to better yourself and trying to and trying to get to the next thing, and also you're on the screen, you're taking in information, and then it's just nonstop, and kind of the benefits of walking are kind of lost because it's so slow and you don't even realize it's happening.
Have you got any apprehensions going back to a lifestyle where you're going to be, presumably, you're going to be in a context where there's all the distractions and all the technology opportunities / distractions that find it difficult to focus? Or has this actually made you so solid in your own being that it almost wouldn't matter what circumstance you're in?
No, I mean, I'll definitely, I'm looking forward to living that sort of static life and just having people around that I know and can hang out with. Just always a stranger wherever I go, which is probably the most challenging part of the walk. And so I'm looking forward to stopping and having friends around and all that. But I think there'll be a balance where I will definitely be going for long hikes and doing traveling still. But I'm pretty good at slowing down naturally. I don't have like social media and phone. I didn't have any social media or anything before I started the walk. I kind of started that just to share the world. And so I think my natural inclination is kind of to slow down and be more contemplative. So I think I'll be all right with that.
Yeah. We talked about last night at the dinner about travelling as you have. You've seen a whole lot of different expressions of religion and faith and belief and etc. And then you mentioned that you were an agnostic or an atheist. How has that? Were you that way inclined before you left on the trip, or is actually seeing all that expression of humanity brought conclusions that where you would now describe yourself as an atheist or an agnostic?
I mean, I think it was confirming of what I believed before. Growing up in the Northeast, you have friends whose parents are Muslim, you have friends whose parents are Protestant, you have friends whose parents are Hindi. When you're in school, you have this diverse friend group in the Northeast of the U.S., and when you're talking about it and you talk about how, everyone's talking about, what makes their parents crazy and weird when you're in high school. And one of the things that you find is that everyone has like their own religion, and it just seems a little ridiculous for anyone. I only have a couple friends who are religious, but it just seems kind of ridiculous because you realize that it's all just a product of circumstance, and then that was verified, for me, it was verified through the traveling, and you see sort of the same thing over and over again, and you see the religious symbols, and you see people praying, and you see you listen to people talking about God, and it's all kind of the same thing, but it's just the milieu changes or the motifs change, and so I think it says more just about the human condition than it does about anything else. I mean, that is the underlying sort of factor, is that they're all humans, and I think some people definitely need religion, and I think it's good in that sense. But I don't need religion. You just be a good person and treat people well, and I think it's really actually, I think it's kind of liberating and important to realize that like you get this little sliver, and that's very lucky that you're here, and I think it's also important to realize how really small you are, and just how utterly insignificant you are. And that's something I see through traveling too, laying under the stars for like months on end in the deserts of Peru and Chile, and just feeling the weight of the stars sitting on your chest like an anvil every night. And you realize, you're so tiny, and to think that there's some massive creature out there, some omnipresent being who's, cares about your life, is a little bit arrogant. And also, but it's good to think you're small. It humbles you, and it also like liberates you in the sense of you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. You're just kind of caught in the wind of circumstance, and that's okay. So if you fail, if you try your best and still fail, and you can have bad habits, but maybe it's from your parents, or maybe it's from your friends, or maybe it's just like the way you're wired a little bit. And so in a certain way, it's liberating. You just go, hey, try my best, and that was a life.
Yeah, I find that it's in pondering that stuff, it's like we're significant. We realize how significant we are, but we're significant, and we're significant to others. and in relationships often. But in the whole scheme of things, we're quite insignificant. And, I believe now I'm getting more comfortable with the fact that knowing that when I die and pass on, people will remember me for a little while, sometime. And then really I'll be just like other dear people who have passed on in my life, and I have the memory, but I don't sit there pondering and thinking or talking to them in my brain. Life moves on, and it's a good humbling position, because I think there's a lot of self-centeredness in the world, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people. You go to the center of Turkey, and there's some kids riding around on donkeys, and there's old men who were shepherds their whole life, and you never heard about them, and you're never going to hear about them, and they're living humble lives, and they go home to their wives at night, and they look forward to seeing their kids.
Yeah.
And that's a life. They lived a life just like you and I did, and to think that they're any more or less important than you or I is arrogant. And I think it is a Western thing, this where you have to be somebody, you have to make something of yourself. And when you realize that, look, you're just living one life, life, and it's going to pass, and you're going to be forgotten, and everyone who remembered you is going to be forgotten. Mm-hmm. So, try and make some people happy, and that's about it.
Yeah. Do you read much?
Yeah.
What's some favourite authors along these threads we're talking about that might be an inspiration for me and for others?
I mean, the best book that I go back to all time is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I read that. It's kind of, I would say it's like akin to my Bible,
right?
Where I go back to that whenever I'm looking for answers, and it's just basically Stoicism and aphorisms on life, meditations on life. I'd say that's the primary one.
Okay.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a little lighter one if you want to read something like that.
Yeah.
It's whatever you want to believe, as long as you're just not being a jerk. It doesn't matter.
There's so many distractions we've got, isn't there, in this modern life? And I find that you're talking about as you're walking, I can imagine, and from the walking I've done, it's a great space to just be contemplative. And if you're walking, then you can't be necessarily concentrating on multiple things, which we always tend to do as soon as we sit our bottom down in a seat and we've got some screens in front of us, we try to multitask like crazy. Is how much do you think that this trend of us wanting to take more and more on, that's being driven often by ego and a desire to accomplish what can in the end be a lot of false acquisition of things, do you think that's do you think it's possible, or do you think that people are waking up to the fact that those things, when they think they're building significance, they're actually not, they're just building assets maybe, or things that spend money on?
I think the younger generation, I think hopefully is realizing that but it's something that I think you just struggle, as humanity struggles with in general, is it's always kind of, especially Western society, which is very individualistic and very driven, you get to prove yourself, can be kind of anxiety-inducing.
How far do you walk a day?
About 40 kilometers, generally. 35 to 40 kilometers,
Okay.
7 to 8 hours or so. Yeah.
Okay, and you can just do that day after day after day, no rest?
Yeah, I could do 40 kilometers every day. And feel good doing it. It would take me, like, if I stopped for a while, it would take me about a month to get up to, up to form, and then I can do 40 kilometers every day.
Really?
Yeah, on end. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Getting a little slower, as it wasn't like when I was 26, I was just a maniac. When I was 26, I think I took maybe 3 weeks off in a whole year from New Jersey down to Panama City, and there was times where I would just walk 40 kilometers a day for months straight. I was just a maniac. And now I'm just stopping all the time. Well, especially now being here in Turkey. Yeah.
So did you go down the East Coast and then across the bottom?
Yeah, so I walked Jersey down to Georgia into Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, and then down across into Mexico in Reynosa, Mexico. Walked along the East Coast and then crossed the Sierra Madre Mountains into Oaxaca, and then down Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, and then flew from Panama City to Bogota, Colombia, and then Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and then took a boat down to Antarctica briefly, and then back to Uruguay, and then flew over to Europe and started the next section.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
A lot of changes in the US since you left.
Yeah, well, luckily when I go back, it'll be A little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does the current situation there with, I see the topped 400,000 deaths in the US from this coronavirus, and obviously all the other instability that's occurring at the moment. How do you feel about returning back into that, where at the moment you're pretty much, escaping all those restraints and lockdowns and things like that? How do you feel about that?
It's interesting. I think a lot of kind of like what I'm doing is a strange juxtaposition for I think what ails America and a lot of Western society, and in the sense that I'm kind of seeing just the world as it is, and I think a lot of the issues that are happening in America are because of just misinformation,
right?
And social media and sort of the algorithm. Just the way the internet works right now is that the most inflammatory post gets shown more, and you can make a business model off of showing more and more inflammatory posts, and a lot of people who maybe don't have the same digital nativism that I have, like growing up with the internet as the internet grew up, or maybe just not being as aware, are more prone to misinformation, and I think that's kind of causing a lot of the issues. It might also just be like the two-party system kind of coming to a head briefly, where it's really becoming us versus them in a lot of ways for a lot of people. I don't think like that. I think there's everyone believes they're the good guy in the story. Yeah. And but I think there's a lot of misinformation, and I think with the media too, people don't really understand its place and what it and the pressures on it, or the incentives of media. For example, you're not going to go see a movie of two guys talking on a park bench. Unless it's a really incredible story at this park bench. You're not going to go see a movie about people going about their day and then going home and just hanging out with their family and playing backgammon. And it's the same for the news. You're not gonna share a story of, oh yeah, this nice Turkish family, they sit on their front yard every day and play backgammon and hang out. So you have to understand what the role of the media is, and what the incentives are, and what the incentive of a story is, and what the purpose of a story is. And even the media, they're New York Times, or even you go devolve into like Breitbart or whatever, they all are just telling a sliver of a story, and so you can't put like an insane amount of weight on this one story. It's telling you part of the world, but it's not telling you everything. And you let that inform, or let your own experiences inform more of your life than this, but follow that byline. And but I feel like a lot of people imagine a lot of what they read is how the world is, absolutely, but it's really just this really small sliver of what the world is really like. I'm sure a lot of people have this misconception of Turkey, where they see it as somewhere dangerous, and maybe they read about the fighting at the Syrian border, and they see the star and crescent on the flag, and I think there's a bunch of radical leaders. But Turkey is one of the safer countries in the world, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country, and it's one of the places where I feel safe is just camping anywhere. And so that's just you got to kind of have to understand the motives and incentives of the media, and so I think that's where my country's failing right now.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. I found that, and we're talking a lot about Turkey because we are in Turkey right now. But when Australia and Turkey fought, the Australian Anzacs fought against Turkey in the First World War, and it's probably was the making of our country in many ways, because it was our first big test. Australian population was about 6 million then, and sent an awful lot of men to war, and a lot of them were killed. And we fought against Turkey in Gallipoli. And so you grow up with a certain bias about Turkey. And then when I first travelled here with my daughter 7 years ago, I was in the Grand Bazaar and someone tried to pickpocket me. And so I was on edge, I guess, at that time in my life. And I developed this thinking about Turkey, and I thought Istanbul was cool and Bodrum was cool. And since coming back here, I just realised how generous these people are, how relaxed they are, how, shopkeepers will offer you their wares, whether that's restaurant or other stuff. And if you say, now, if you go to the Grand Bazaar, those guys know how to trade, and they don't want to let you go, because if you're there and you've got money in your pocket and they've got something that's broadly what you want to buy, then they want to sell it to you, no question. Or if they don't, then my friend will, my friend, and they'll take you off to all their half dozen. One point of contact there, you can buy everything you ever need, which is wonderful. But I just find there's a graciousness amongst these people that's I haven't seen anywhere else. And we talked a bit there before about dogs and the way the dogs and the cats are treated here. It's a very peaceable country. It's very refreshing, and so many generous, lovely people here. Hey Tom, how much does all your gear weigh?
A lot. Probably in total, maybe. Probably I would guess 65 pounds without water and all that. I would guess. I haven't weighed in a while. That's with the cart and everything. Yeah, that's what I would guess.
So it wouldn't be feasible to wear a backpack? I guess you couldn't pump through the miles.
No, yeah. A lot of the reason you go with the cart is because if you're going intercontinental, or if you're traveling across country, there's just not trails that connect all the countries. There's a Licking Way, which would for me be a 10-day walk.
Yeah.
Or a 2-week walk, something like that, and then that's it. And then you have to use the road.
Yeah.
So if you're going these insanely long distances, and if I'm going through desert like I was in South America, which I'll be doing next year, this year in Uzbekistan and in Kazakhstan, and especially with a dog, you need to carry a lot of water, and so the cart is just kind of really. You could do it. If you didn't have a dog, maybe you could do it with a backpack, but it would be a challenge for sure. Yeah.
Does your dog ever take up residence in the? You have to push.
When she was a puppy, she did, but now no, she's
good.
Yeah, she walks. We end the day and she still wants to play. We'll walk 30 miles and she still wants to play at the end of the day. Yeah, she's a beast.
And do you have you ever run yourself dry of water or other nutrition and out in the middle of nowhere and thought, geez, what am I going to do? I'm out of gas.
I've come close. When I was crossing the Andes from Chile into Argentina, I spent 5 days, but that was up to 4 days at about 5,000 meters, and with nothing around. There's only salt lakes. There's no town, so I was loaded with water, and I had to push up about 3,000 meters in one day. And then when you're at 5,000 meters, your body just doesn't heal. You don't get the same oxygen at night. And so after, on the fourth day, after getting about 2 hours of sleep and camping in the wind, I was 20 miles from the Argentinian border where there's a little outpost. But I started pushing my cart in the morning, and it was the only time when my legs just totally gave out on me. And it was like I had truly, without hyperbole, just reached the point of exhaustion, and where my legs, there's no drama in it. It just fell because my legs were just fell over, and my legs were just done. And then I laid there, and Savannah sat beside me, and I was thinking, how long can I lay here? And I was going to get up eventually. I wasn't totally dead, but I think I only had 1.5 liters or maybe 1 liter of water left at that point. So I was like, I have to get to town. So yeah, I ended up getting and powering through. But yeah, that was as close as I've gone. Yeah, I'd say.
And what do you use for your just your navigation? Maps.me or one of the free offline maps?
Yeah, Maps.me, Google Maps is great. You just download them offline. That's generally sufficient. Yeah.
Well, Tom Turcich, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It's been a real pleasure meeting you. And I'm definitely going to be following your blog. Just tell us again.
Yeah, The World Walk across all the social media platforms.
So, Tom, I could imagine that in 20 years' time, I keep up with you and connect with you again, and I've seen you've done something quite remarkable in your life, whether that's whatever that is. In some way, you're a notable character, because I think what you've taken on here has given you lessons for life and development, which are not usual. They're not common, are they?
No, I'll be the 8th person to walk around the world, so yeah, definitely not.
That's incredible. But Are you happy to live a nondescript, quiet life where no one hears about you again, or do you think you've got a greater purpose? And if so, what is that purpose?
Yeah, I mean, if I do have a greater purpose, it's to do some charitable work or something, or even something for dogs in the world. Having Savannah has made me very empathetic and to dogs and seeing all the street dogs. But yeah, I have to do something ultimately to make the world a better place. If I leave this earth and haven't made the world at least a modicum better, haven't made people happier or safer in some way, then I've failed. I think that's the only meaning. I can live a nondescript life and without any renown, but as long as I've done something good in the world, then I can be pretty happy and satisfied.
Yeah. Tom, are you powered by not just the sun, solar powered, but do you? I know that you are open to taking donations just to help fund the expenses of the trip. Is that something that's possible if people are interested in following you and contributing?
Yeah, sure. I have a patreon.com/theworldwalk. It's on there. But yeah, check out the content and everything. See if you like that first. But yeah, if you want, you can follow. I have a map of my live location, and I send postcards to people from around the world. So yeah, if you want, the Patreon is a great way to support me in Savannah.
Yeah. Well, the intention of doing these podcasts on the fly like this, just audio only, not with all the setup of video, etc., is to just take the opportunity as I'm meeting so many interesting people and doing cool shit. The Manschit project, meeting cool people, interesting people doing cool shit. And Tom is certainly one of those people. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for taking the time. It's been a blast, and good luck on the rest of the trip. I will follow you with eagerness to track your progress and how it's all going.
It was great talking with you, Dave. Enjoyed it.